History of space travel. We're going to start this lesson first talking about Robert Goddard. On March 16, 1926, he launched the first liquid-fueled rocket. It reached as high as 41 feet in the air and stayed up for 2 seconds, and it averaged a speed of 60 miles per hour. He paid for his own experiments because no one would back him at the beginning, and then the Smithsonian Institution started helping him with the funding. He is known as the father of modern rocketry, even though he never got to see any space flights. If it wasn't for him, we possibly would not have space travel. We would not have space travel today. Here's some pictures of him. Here's the rocket that broke the sound barrier in 1930. And I like these pictures because you can see the size comparison of the size of the rockets compared to humans. Next is Wernher von Braun. Wernher is from Germany. In 1942, he built the first long-range ballistic missile for warfare. This was the V-2 rocket. He had his first successful launch on October 1942, but the first time it was used in combat was September 1944 during World War II, and he worked for Nazi Germany. After the war, he did switch to go work for America. He was known as the most important rocket developer and champion of space exploration from the 1930s to 1970. Here's some pictures of Wernher von Braun with his team. Again, I think it's cool to see the comparison of the size of the rockets next to a grown man. So after World War II was the Cold War. So this is from 1946 to 1991. It was between the United States and the Soviet Union. What the Cold War means is that if this was a time when the USA and the Russians were mad at each other, they were at war but not physically fighting, but fighting each other through threatening each other with nuclear weapons. It's also known as the atomic age. This was the first H-bomb. This was when the first H-bomb was built. And this is when the competition for space development took off between the United States and Russians. They were wanting to beat each other to space. So Sputnik 1 and 2. Sputnik was the first artificial satellite. It was about the size of a beach ball, and it took 89 minutes to orbit Earth. Sputnik 1 was launched by the Russians on October 4th, 1957. This is the start of the United States and the USSR space race. In 1955, the U.S. announced they were developing a satellite to orbit the Earth, so the Russians beat them to it. Sputnik 2 was launched by the Russians on November 3rd, 1957. So the Russians now had launched 2, and we hadn't launched any. And America did not like that. So in response, what happened is we have the Explorer 1. So von Braun's team sent up Explorer 1 on January 31st, 1958. This was our first launch satellite. The job of the Explorer 1 was to measure the radiation in Earth's orbit. Again, I like these pictures because you can see the size of it compared to the grown men, and here it is at the very top of that rocket. So the launch of Sputnik satellites was what led to the creation of NASA, which stands for the National Aeronautics Space Administration. It was created on July 29th, 1958, and became operational on October 1st, 1958. The first was Mercury 7. This was May 1961. This was the United States' first manned in space program, consisting of 7 men. The mission of Mercury 7 was to 1. Orbit a manned spacecraft around Earth, 2. Investigate man's ability to function in space, and 3. Recover both the man and the spacecraft safely. So between 1961 and 1963, there were 6 manned missions. President Kennedy commits the country to a moon landing by 1970. So May 25th, 1961, President Kennedy spoke in front of Congress and committed the United States to sending men to the moon by 1970. He felt like he was in a space race with the Soviets to be the first country to have men on the moon. The Soviets were the first to send a rocket into space, and he wanted to catch up and overtake them. So May 5th, 1961, Alan Shepard was the first American into space, but the Soviets had put the first man into space also. This is the birth of the Apollo project. So here is the famous moon landing. Let's watch the video. I love that clip because that was 1969 and we have come such a long way since then, but that was monumental. Um, let's look. This is all of the Apollo missions with the Saturn rockets. And so when you talk about the Apollo missions, the rockets take up most of what you see here. And the very top is where the astronauts are. So let's review what we have learned so far. By the way, if you're listening to this lesson and the links, or if you cannot hear the videos, please go back to the PowerPoint itself or the Google slide itself and click on the links. These videos are really great. All right. So that is a great review of what we learned so far and a little bit of added history in there. Our relationships with Russia did improve. And that leads us to, let me get it back over here, the Space Shuttle program. So NASA's Space Shuttle was the world's first reusable spacecraft. Excuse me. It launched like a rocket and returned to Earth like a glider. It was designed to carry large payloads, such as satellites. Payloads means it could just hold a lot of cargo, um, and let's see, into orbit and bring them back if necessary for repairs. So between the first launch on April 12, 1981, and the final landing on July 21st, 2011, NASA's Space Shuttle fleet Columbia, Challenger, Discovery, Atlantis, and Endeavour flew 135 missions and helped construct the International Space Station and inspire generations. I'm going to pause this right here, keep going on, and look for video 2 so you can finish the lesson.